Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Eric Airlock, and this is another talk about Daoism. So Confucius said the outer form without the inner meaning, having the outer behavior without the right intent, doing what looks like the right thing but for the wrong reason, is the worst thing there is, because you can't really screw up stabbing somebody randomly, but you can screw up giving gifts and make people suspect giving gifts, which now you've screwed up giving gifts, and you can't screw up stabbing people. The Bamboo Lao Tzu says there is no mistake worse than knowing when you have enough. So the Taoists, unlike the Confucians, seem to say that the worst mistake there is, well, probably stabbing people's up there on the list, is that there is no mistake worse than not knowing when enough is enough. Overdoing things, overfeeling things, overthinking things, overeating, oversleeping, these are the worst. You should do just enough, and then that's enough, including feeling and thinking, which leads to skepticism, as we've talked about in the other talks. Or I've talked about. Somebody's here. You know, the cats don't talk to me. So only those who know they have enough can have enough. It says in the earliest verses of the Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, also as it's known, the earliest text and the central core text of China, and these are the early verses dug up in the cave recently. So the early verses, they were always the early verses, but we know they were the early verses because they were dug up in a cave also recently, as they were before. So if we know we have enough, we know no shame or harm, mental or physical, it's told in the early verses. Taking slow and easy care of each thing and not rushing to the end is unbeatable. We just had... You see a crossbow pellet and demand a roast dove, says zhongzha. Doing without overdoing is what can't be undone. Be strong and wide so you won't be broken and scattered. Bodhidharma says the tallest thing in the universe is the self, but the greatest thing is the mind, which suggests the mind is far wider. Have a wide stance, yes, and yes, you will be unbeatable. Don't hunger to be full, it says. See plainly and embrace simply. Do enough and then leave. Don't force all you can out of things. Don't boast. Don't seek more, as this is overdoing. The wise care without caring, teach without talking, damn, and grow without saving or claiming. Well, in this economy, who can? If you're not choosy, you can always have everything. The wise return again and again to what most rush past, because they don't desire the rare more than the common. This is kind of like the floating plastic bag of American Beauty. If you can see the beautiful in anything, well, then everything's kind of priceless, including plastic bags, which is good. You know, they're increasingly rare, at least in these parts. So, taste the tasteless, like my jokes. Enjoy the formlessness and freedom of things. Treat the small like it's big and the easy like it's hard. The wise see all as difficult and have no difficulties. If you treat everything as if it's a problem, you have fewer and fewer problems, as far as you would scream about. The difficult is easy if you take it with slow care, like a tree from a sprout, or a tower from a pile of dirt, or a journey of 1,000 miles, which starts with a single footstep right in front of your feet, it says in the text. You may have heard the proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles. In the Tao Te Ching, it says a journey of 1,000 li, which is effectively some sort of mile, starts with the single footstep right in front of your feet. You know, kind of like quitting smoking is tossing that pack right now, or going one night without cigs. You know, it's like that's what the single footstep is, or the first hour, or whatever have you. That would be what the single footstep right in front of you, the open possibilities all around you are the single footstep right in front of your feet, which is right in front of you. The way gets easier, it says, unlike control, knowledge, power, and positioning, which brings problems. More money, more problems, more rap artists. The Buddha also says that you should it should make the Taoists and the Buddhists say, make things difficult for yourself, but they also say things should get easier and easier. But the only way things get easier and easier in life is if you really pile on the work. If you really pile on the work, then things get easier and easier. So you have to take everything hard for things to get easier and easier. Everything, the little things, take care of the little things such that it then ironically is easier and easier, because you took care of them in the first footstep. So we have just as slower things are easier to catch, we're told. Life, including ourselves in all things, is easier to understand when we understand things slowly and simply. If you prepare for everything by being attached to nothing in particular, you are planning for everything before there is a sign of any particular thing or any particular problem. Plan for everything, which here is not overthinking it. Plan simply and basically, which is planning for all contingencies, which you shouldn't overthink and overprepare, and you have already prepared for everything without overextending yourself. That implies there's simple ways to prepare that are nice and simple and healthy, of course, and let's hope there are, that are affordable, again, in this economy. Treating everyone the same, calm, easy way prepares for every sort of situation with others. That's verse 45. Again, I am quoting and then commentating. Yes, I am a commentator. And yes, prepares for every sort of situation and so we have in the verse before treating things so simply, and here we have, what is that? Treating everyone the same and with calm and with patience. I'm going to do more videos about Alice in Wonderland soon, and what is the central lesson that the caterpillar tells her such that she can move through the center of her journey? That she should be patient, and she learns that, and then she starts unlocking doors. So you can do without harm, even though doing can't fully do anything forever, we're told. 5 colors blind eyes, Zen folks quote this Taoist text. 5 colors blind eyes, 5 notes deafen ears, 5 tastes wither tongues, races and hunts madden the mind. Political races lately anyways. Rare treasures lead us off. The wise feed the belly. The wise feed the belly, not the eye. This is sometimes translated actually as sort of empty the mind and fill the belly, which because the eye could be understood to have concepts or ideas up in it and in the head, thus in fire and light, etc. That and it can often be that, why would you empty people's minds? Doesn't that make them stupid? Well, they want you to think they're idiots, but they also want you to realize you're smarter if you have an open mind, and if you empty out the mind, not if you're just joining a cult mindlessly, but if you empty out the mind, which would actually be being dogmatic and fixed about things, not being open-minded for yourself and courageous and truly open. Nobody has to fear being truly open. You do have to fear people taking advantage of you, but you don't have to fear being truly open with others and treating them as equals. Because treat everyone as equals in and outside the cult is never a cult, really. So if you slow down and treat everyone with the same calm, you can feed the belly and feed people. And then if you feed people, they do actually say we'd have fewer philosophy texts if people were all fed, because there'd be fewer problems and there'd be fewer speculations needed. And actually we could have fewer texts and more fed bellies. And the Taoist is saying, let's all be fools and be simple, feed each other, and not need so much intellectual discussion. So again, the very fact that I'm teaching you a lot of philosophy means we've already screwed up royal, so here we keep going, So, speaking of preparing for all possible situations and dealing with fools, you're going to keep finding them everywhere in every sort of position. It is good to name and order things, but also know when to stop. This also sounds like pragmatism versus positivism a little to me. It's not that you ever have a metaphysical or perfect system, or perfect absolute universal facts, words that could be said in every situation, but that's okay, because as long as you're strong, you can come to agreements and facts and words with others as you need to, which is not the same as lying. That is being very different in the situation than coming to things as earnestly and pragmatically as possible and truthfully. So understanding means speaking less. Speaking much is trying too hard. Use few words if you don't stand with all use few words. If you don't stand with all of your words, others won't stand with you. Words are very fleeting, cheap beings. I can say a lot to you. Lewis Carroll says, I pluck butterflies out of the sky and sell them as mutton pies. But if you start flinging around free words cheaply, others don't often stand with you. Sometimes they do. We're waiting and seeing. But, it's basically, words are cheap, but action, real, solid action that actually results in lasting change, that often takes patience, that often takes wisdom, that takes empathizing with others, and that is something where using flippant words will not cause others to stand with you solidly as much as doing what is good for pretty much humanity in general, I would say, because there's really, that would be the simplest and the easiest and the simplest of romanticized ancient Taoist times. If things grow and desire thrives, I'll cool them with unnamed simplicity, it says. These are all, and we're continuing with verses of the Tao Te Ching. So those are all from the Bamboo Lao Tzu. Those are the earliest verses, as we know. The later verses of the Tao Te Ching that were added to the earliest and first of Taoist texts, they add additional insights in there. Now, look at the All Mom video about the back and forth of the Tao Te Ching and adding the verses that are more female to male, etc. It says, I love this quote, a great nation must be led the way one fries a small fish. So how would you lead a nation? Carefully, because it's baby bear theory. It's middle of the road, so if it's just a little singed on this side, you have to do a little bit on this side. Not flop. Again, you're not the first son of the samurai and you just carve everything completely. You gotta fry it like a small fish. The greatest of things should be treated like the least of things, and the least of things should be treated like the greatest of things. So a nation should be ruled like one fries a small fish, very, very carefully and tenderly, lovingly, down by the fire. If one administers the world according to the Tao, then the ancestors do not swarm about as spirits. Not that the ancestors are not spirits, the text seems to add, maybe that was added in also, there's several authors, could always be, but their spirits do not harm humanity. It's almost as if another author, and there could be several authors, decided to add in here, which seems appropriate. And I tell my students all the time, if ancient people seem smart and materialistic, they're not necessarily not animistic. And where is life? Where does it start and end? And all sorts of things. Well, we can define this and that. It says here that this is very similar to Confucius. He says, you guys are worried about feeding spirits, but you don't know how to feed people. You're worried about death and the afterlife, but you don't know how to live life. And whatever you think about the afterlife or not, if you know how to live life and feed people, then you know how to live any kind of life, and then you're taking care of the afterlife, probably, if we were wagering with Pascal, and a good one, if there is any. So why are you worried about leading another life if you don't know how to live this one? Which, of course, it says here, it's not that there aren't spirits and we're not being animists here in ancient China. It's that you do not have to worry about spirits if your ducks are in a row. There aren't hell demons bothering you with weird plot twists of the horror movie because you are solid, because you're not screwing with things you should not be screwing with. The ancient tablets, etc. So basically, it's whether or not you're an animist, I'm not personally an animist, it's like you don't have to deal with spirits and paranoia and PTSD and a bunch of other stuff if you are not screwing with a bunch of people and getting into problems and doing terrible things, and then spirits all swarm around the ancient tribal warriors, and it's like, and it's like, yes, because you were screwing around with a bunch of stuff, and screwing around with things brings spirits. This is how we have spirits, Great. Now they're spirits. So, to dampen our spirits just a little bit here, not dilute them, but simply dampen them a tiny, we'll move on here in the text. So, here's another great quote of the Tao verses here, of the Tao Te Ching. Whoever knows others is clever. Whoever knows themselves is wise. Whoever conquers others has force. Whoever conquers themselves, whoever conquers themselves, are you the object or the subject there? So yin-yang, so meta, bro. Whomever conquers themselves is truly strong. In Islam, often mentioned here, the lesser jihad is the political or social struggle. The greater jihad, the greater problem, is the struggle with the self. Whether or not you're Islamic or you like Islam, or whether or not you are in league with this or that at all. That the greater thing to do across world religions and cultures is to conquer the self, not necessarily engage in empire or not. And the Taoists are not interested in engaging much in empire, though Taoism was back and forth over the years in China, which is the only reason we have these texts, and I'm telling them to you now. Again, from the Tao, which is possibly the most printed work of philosophy in all of human history, considering printing comes from China, but the most reproduced short and central text of all of philosophy ever. Again, it's more printable than the Republic. And that's, no apologies. Yes? So, whoever knows how to conquer enemies does not fight them. That's Sun Tzu. Except it's not Sun Tzu. This is the Tao. And Sun Tzu's text, we're not going to do that this year. We're going to do that for Asian philosophy next semester. But Sun Tzu, I might squeeze that in over the holiday break if I can. Sun Tzu is so Taoist in so many ways. So many of the quotes line up so much. It must be a similar thinker, and yet there is yet to call people Taoists, as many scholars say at the time. Again, zhongzha might not have known or Lao Tzu they are Taoists, and neither did Sun Tzu or not. The strategist, the art of war. Required reading for the CIA since Vietnam. So whoever knows how to conquer enemies does not fight them. Aikido. Whoever, I will talk more on that, or I did already, I believe. Whoever knows how to use men well keeps them low. Keeps themselves low. Not keeps others low. Keeps themselves low. This is, again, the sage hides and doesn't stick out and be like, hey, look at me. Like, because you know how to rule without doing anything. Something more like a campaign manager, I imagine. The wise are free from themselves, such that they can become themselves. That's a nice Hallmark card. Words keep trying to dive to its depths, to figure out everything in life and what we're talking about. Best to live in the middle of it, who is muddy enough to clear things up. That's presented in the very beginning of the Tao, as Wang Bi said it in the latter years of the Han, I believe. So in the zhongzha, we are told the emperor learns how to rule his kingdom by listening to Cook Ding, who tells the emperor that he has learned over a lifetime how to cut up oxen with his knife that never dulls because he knows instinctively where the spaces are between the bones and the sinews and the tendons. He feels it out slowly, and because he feels it out slowly, he is lightning fast. And he says, how did you get that way? He's like, I very patiently learned and felt and felt and felt and felt and felt and felt and felt. And he can now bang, 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 because he slowly over years, and now he can do it with lightning speed. So if you see lightning speed, you're like, I want that right now, like demanding a roast dove when you only have a crossbow pellet. Yeah, do push hands for about, 17 years, and then you're on to the next stage. And everybody's like, oh, that's hard. There's a good Zen koan. Oh, well, now it's 34 years. You know what I mean? Because, of course, if you're like, it's like, well, you're not the kind of guy who's going to learn it in 17 years then, are you? So twice as long. Clack. That's your sentence, and you have sentenced yourself, with your own emotions, etc., and judgments. So the monkey trainer story, I actually did a small silly video about this a long time ago. The monkey trainer story is excellent. It's another story from the zhongzha that speaks of less is more and seeing perspective and the cycles of things. So we're told the monkey trainer, and I do have on the website, again, follow along with the verses on the website if you want the citations, etc., that the monkey trainer one day was handing out acorns. This is going to be awesome. And he said, why is he talking to the monkeys in the first place? You get 3 acorns in the morning and 4 acorns at night. And all the monkeys were furious. So he said, okay, we'll do it another way. You get 4 acorns in the morning and 3 at night. And all the monkeys were delighted. And it says in the text, there was no change in the reality behind the words, and yet the monkeys responded with joy and anger. Now, what this implies is that you're giving them an acorn at noon and just telling the monkeys, oh, you get 4 in the morning, 3 at night. They're like, boo. It's like, okay, I'm going to change my words, but not the timing of the acorns, is what it implies. And the monkeys were all delighted. There's no change. In fact, think about in life how we're happy and sad. If we're peasants, we're kings, we're happy and sad. There's no change in the emotions and the ups and downs, even though there's so much change in spite of that. And then the text says, they respond with joy and anger. Let them if they want to. It does not say change humanity. It does not say teach people morals. It says people who want to be jerks and be impatient, let that run its course. Let jerks jerk, let haters hate. Haters gonna hate, children. What year is this? I think, years after that expression, I think it's still going, the hate. You know what I mean? I'm from the hate originally, and it's still there. I think there's tourists, they still get there somehow, even in this pandemic. So, yeah, the hate is still around. Again, hate, Ani, the scribe of ancient Egypt, says rage destroys itself. It damages its own affairs. It does that, and it perpetuates itself, and it rolls in cycles like lightning. So, apparently, these monkeys are just going to respond with joy and anger. It says, yeah, just let them. This is a very good verse for when you're frustrated with life. The Taoist view, which I have increasingly somewhat adopted, I must say, is that if humanity is wonderful and terrible, and if we don't really fix it, but we continue to live as it, then you can freak out about future terrible humanity. I'm not saying don't, watch over things as you should, but if you're being careful and patient, and if you know humanity will remain humanity, then you can let people be all delighted with humanity. Oh, there's been more science this year. Finally, humanity will grow in wisdom rather than ignorance. Or, boo, there's been some shortages of this, or now there's that. Well, if humanity's been humanity for thousands of years, and if it's going to remain humanity for a couple thousand more at best, let's hope, let's continue. It's been at least 100,000, if not 2, according to experts, that we have been humanity, been good and bad, according to, looking like Amazonians on YouTube, which you can watch nowadays, in translation, them yammer at each other. These are illiterate people. Looking like people. If people have been people for thousands of years, then how are you going to steer it to the right or the left as the Taoist view? And if there's no change in the reality behind the words of the cultures and the things and the people and the stuff, if people are people regardless of who they are, then if people want to freak out about different kinds of people, if they want to be different kinds of people, that's awesome. But the wise who take part in 10,000 ages, that's fine. You know what? Less is more here. You do you. That's great. I can relax into being everybody, and I don't need any distinction at all. In fact, the implication here is you can work people well like Robin Hood behind the scenes, all stealth-like, if you are invisible as wise, not seeking position, and way smarter than most people. Which is, and Sun Tzu would say, if you want to be a real good general and be a jerk and kill a lot of people, you should do that way too. So that's empowering advice, whether we're good or bad with it, Again, it's required reading for the CIA. So if you want to steer countries or people, I wouldn't just take the bad or the good. I would take both the good and the bad and see the bad as the good and the good and the bad. And if you do that, I guess you can rule Guatemala, though Machiavelli says you shouldn't want to, really. Heck. So, what have yous? We have here that the monkeys are wearing out their minds, it says, trying to get more when in fact they already have enough. This is something if you gain or lose a car, but I have gained and lost a car, actually, and then I've gained and lost other things, and that was more important. But if you gain and lose a car, and if you still are happy and sad, well, then there's been no change in the reality behind the words, at least the emotions and the meaning and the semantics. But if all the facts and the agreements and the physical metal changes and the semantics and the meaning don't, well, then gaining, losing a car doesn't mean much difference, do it? Of course, having a car or not could mean difference of saving your kid or not, unless it's the mist, But honestly, yeah. If gaining or losing a car doesn't make you happy or sad ultimately, and if psychology shows us that, well, then if that's Maslow, then what are you doing? Then what are we all doing? We basically should keep the larger picture, and if we keep the larger picture, then we will see more clearly. So Sema Cheng-sen says, just as we choose our friends carefully, we should carefully choose what we live with. Just as you see I have, I clearly with abandon. Just as a bird that nests alone on a branch would be lost in a flock, and an animal that drinks from a stream has no need to seek the ocean. If we are content with little, we have most of what we need within ourselves. See if things are serious, essential, or needless. Sema says if we use if they spark joy, you know what I mean? Hopefully this passage and this lecture sparks joy, you know? Sema says if we use a jewel to shoot a sparrow, think about that. Hey, that's a fine looking jewel. This will kill the heck out of that bird because it's such a nice jewel. You know, it's like, don't do, if you use a jewel to shoot a sparrow, the Zen folks say using a sledgehammer to swat a fly is too much effort. Sledgehammers are expensive, you know what I mean? Don't need to put one through. Walls are expensive. Don't need to put it through the wall. You know, you'll lose it. More ways than one. If we use a jewel to shoot a sparrow, people will laugh. But most people waste their lives on needless expenses of time, energy, and money. Sema, again, is living during the Song, during Chinese Renaissance times, when Daoism and Zen are hip and cool. At least Zen is in being very Taoist. And he says, people would all laugh at you if you're using, if you're like, with gemstones to take out, birds. But people do that kind of thing all the time with everything in life, don't they? You know? And of course, it's a metaphor, for society and your last English teachers, At least not not this English teacher, the one before that. So Sema also uses, because he's living in Zen Song Chinese times, uses Buddha's metaphor of the raft, which he would know, without mentioning Buddha, which he wouldn't, to make it Taoist, to refer to everything in life, such as clothes and fine food, as boats that we can abandon once they are needless. He also tells us sex addiction is empty, and beautiful women are more dangerous than evil spirits. He does not tell us how dangerous beautiful men are at all. Perhaps he is not involved. He was not there at the time. He says that zhongzha was right, whom he quotes several times, that beautiful women are not attractive to fish and birds. Again, it's kind of the anti-Sleeping Beauty. If you're all coming out as models into the forest, the deer are like, I'm out of here. She's going to bite me in the face, And it's, that you're damn ugly to a deer, no matter who the heck you are, or what beauty standards or image there are in society. You're all chubby Renaissance person, and it's like, nope. Deer's like, wrong. Not a Renaissance deer, apparently. Perhaps he's Italian. When the deer don't find beautiful women attractive, which I've mentioned that point all the time, and I think it's a hilarious moment of zhongzha. He says, men think the two legendary beautiful women of ancient China were beautiful, but deer think and fish just swim away. They're like, deer would swim away if they can't run, I suppose. So he then takes it, obviously, in a abstain from sex kind of way. He's like, zhongzha was right. Zhongzha doesn't actually say sex is evil at all, so maybe he's being a bit Zen. Because the Zen folks are being Taoist, and they're also living in monasteries while making weird sexual jokes and Taoistic jokes, which we haven't gotten to yet. But maybe this is a Taoist actually worrying that his stuff is a little bit too sexual. Or hedging his bets, or other things. So he says, Sema says, not zhongzha, that true wizards see beautiful women the way that deer and fish do. We will not talk about wizards with wizards on the internet right now. When we see others do wrong and hate them or what they do, it is like taking the knife from the suicidal and killing ourselves with it instead. I think you guys may have seen that internet cartoon where somebody rushes in to help a suicidal person with a smile on their face and then shoot them instead. And people are like, no, wait, what? And are horrified. It's a wordless cartoon. I'm not sure where it is, or someone could post. Is that, it's like it actually says in this medieval Chinese text of Sema, it's like in the Song Dynasty, it says that, it's like, why would you grab the weapon from the suicidal and use it on yourself? The wise wield the mind bravely like a warrior wields a sword. It's a wonderful quote of Sema. And all forces against them scatter in fright. That is a wonderful quote to put above the door. It's a little intimidating again. I will say it in full. The wise wield the mind bravely like a warrior wields a sword, and all forces against them scatter in fright. Coupled with Sun Tzu, if you win the mental game, and you know what to say and not say and leave unsaid, you don't even have to lift a finger. and your enemies will just scatter in fright. Again, which the Taoist would be doing not by fighting people and punching people, but by saying the least word less and being able to barely lift a finger and yet watch everything overturn and nobody knows they did a thing because they just Rube Goldberg the whole thing and dominoed it, and now the butterfly flapped its wings and they can watch their effect without needing pride and without overacting. Sema says, do not dwell on things while doing things, and the mind will stabilize. Very much we have here like the muddy puddle stabilizing. So the Bamboo Lao Tzu says that the ways of things circle and bend. So things that circle and bend last longer. We can't stay in place or stay full, or keep a knife sharp by sharpening it. And we can't guard a room of priceless treasures. Opposites such as is and isn't, good and bad, love and hate, beautiful and ugly, easy and hard, short and long, small and big, chaos and harmony, leader and follower lead to each other. There is a pun in the text, leader and follower follow each other, which is circular cycles of leadership and culture and everything like that. Ages, eras, empires, which the historians have already recorded. The text asks, which is worse, winning or losing? Well, if things come in cycles, it's going to be both for you, isn't it? And that's what they're tempting you. They're tempting you with an A or B answer. You don't have to give one. You could give a wiser A and B both answer. And they do suggest that quite explicitly in more than one place in the very text, tempting you away from it. Great devices. If we see that we win and lose again and again, both are two sides of the same flippin' coin. Saying yes or no are often much the same, and good and evil work nearby each other, it says. I like to think they work in the same office park, you know. It's, they park next to each other. It's like the good corporation and the, probably, you know, well, there's HR and then there's other departments. Is that good and evil work nearby each other, perhaps in cubicles. It's again, enter your comedy about angels and devils and Office Space here, you know, with Mike Judge. Work to overcome the cold and calm, and rest to overcome the hot and tense. And in balance, these can rule the world, the Tao Te Ching, the original Taoist text says. Don't seek or fix self things, knowing, caring, profit, wisdom, rank, justice, and everyone gains. Feels for others, and jerks are gone. The text says robbers and thieves will go missing, like things do when there are robbers and thieves. Which actually, it's punning on that also. It's hard to express it in exact English words so simply. What it is saying is the robbers and thieves will get stolen away like robbers and thieves steal things away. It's just we don't say steal things away. We would say vanish. But of course, they vanish things. You know, we just don't say they vanish things. We say they steal things. But you could pun on the same words. We have problems, the text says, because we have lives. If we had no lives, what problems would we have? I read some of these verses in the Bamboo Lao Tzu video. There is a famous Taoist story. I've had students actually before, more than one, quote me this story, and they said, I ought to add that to the lecture, and I didn't because technically this story is an addition that is not found, as far as I can, in the original text of Taoism, but you hear it often in compilations of Taoist texts and stories. And I still have yet to place it, actually. It's a famous Taoist story called Sai Wang Loses His Horse, which Sai says isn't bad, as we have to wait and see. Every time it's like, oh, this is good, oh, this is bad, say the neighbors and the common people who are clearly more foolish than him. And does he say, nope, you're stupid? He says less. He says, gotta wait and see. I oftentimes like quoting the Simpsons bit where it's, again, wisdom coming with age and stuff. Bart and the Simpsons go to New York and they see three rabbis walking together with an old one in the middle. And Bart's like, it's ZZ Top, like the bearded rock band. And he's like, you guys rock. And he yells out to them. And the older rabbi, cynical wisdom, is like, maybe a little, you know. I mean, it's a little, you know, and it's like, it's like maybe a little we rock, I don't know. What's not to like? Is that, it's that little, and we have to wait and see. It's a little cynical wisdom. That's what Sai says. He doesn't say yes, no, he says maybe so. Baby bear theory. So Sai's horse loses his horse flees, and people are like, it's bad. He's like, wait and see. Then his horse comes back with another free horse. People are like, hey, free horse. You didn't have to pay for. Sai says, he doesn't want to look it in the mouth. But he says, this isn't necessarily good, we have to wait and see. Then Sai's son rides that weird, fine horse and breaks his leg after riding the free horse. If it was a white horse, whether or not it's a horse, according to Gong Sung Long, again, don't ride the white horse, kids, you know. Then the war comes, and Sai's son has to stay home. He broke his leg, which is bad. Wait and see. Well, now we need spearmen for the spear unit, so all the young men of the town, unfortunately like so many war memorials across America, all the young men of the town decided to go into a legion, and guess what? They were all slaughtered. So the only young man who survived in the town is the guy who broke his leg. So breaking his leg was good, because it did eventually. Now, that doesn't mean he intentionally dodged the draft. I did mention it's like the Taoists are the kind of folks to more hippie-ish dodge the draft rather than serve the state like a Confucian or a legalist. Let's not get into that right now. We'll get into that, later with other ways. But basically, wait and see, slow thing, whether or not you are going to join the spear unit or not. Caution, patience is the best policy, no matter what happens, and waiting and seeing and keeping the open mind. It does not mean non-action. In this, he doesn't have to act, actually. But it does mean acting less is acting more. And he acted not at all. And things turned around to his favor, oddly, several times. And then didn't. Archilochos, one of the famous, first famed Greek archaic poets, says, "Remember, things rise and fall, and when you're up, you're down, you've been down, and when you're down, you've been up." And that's wisdom I say at the time when talking about that guy for the Greek class. That's the Tao. That's some of the wisdom people tell people. Why would that still be so simple and so wise? Because when we're up, we don't know we've been down, and when we're down, we don't know where. It's the duck rabbit, and it is perspective. So in the later verses of the Tao Te Ching, it says, what you want to weaken, you must first allow to grow strong. What you want to destroy, you must first allow to flourish. From whom you want to take, to them you must first give. And the more the sages do for others, the more they possess. The more they give to others, the more they have. Which, regardless of your social or political beliefs, regardless of what forms that takes, the more that you contribute to others and the more that you are doing that, the more you find yourself getting in return without asking. The more you ask, the more people recede from you. This is somewhat the Aesop fable of it's not flies with honey and vinegar, but it is the sun and the wind and the cloak, and the sun says, I can get the cloak, the wind says, I can get the cloak right off this guy, blows, the guy clutches it tighter, and then the sun says, watch this, shines, and simply shining makes the guy remove his cloak himself. That is very similar here, and it seems to be, people will agree with you and open up to you if you just shine a little bit. If you storm open up to me at people, they will be like, sure, boss, and then privately they will do something else, because they're not going to open up to you if you go around kicking in doors. So the more you do for others, the more patient you are, the less you ask for yourself, the more you get. This is kind of that, I have certainly been guilty of trying to grab the largest slice of pizza. If you are the kind of person who grabs a smaller slice of pizza and eats it more patiently, you will find weirdly other people all around you offering you things far more than if you are the kind of person who would grab the largest slice of pizza for yourself first, because you will not notice how you are conditioning everyone around you to be this way or that way. They will probably not notice it either. They will be too concerned with their own slice of pizza. Aren't we all, in ancient China? So, there are several stories in the Lieza of wisdom, showing that we can see in cycles. These, and then we're going to move on to acting the fool here after these story or two of the Lieza. So, Liang Yang, a slave and royal tamer of wild beasts, says that to tame a tiger, this is an excellent passage, and I quote this all the time. To tame a tiger, I have a tiger around here somewhere. He is, I don't know where he is, maybe it's again. So he's been tamed. The tigers have fled the countryside. That you neither feed a tiger a live rabbit if you want to tame it, nor anger it, which would lead to a cat frenzy, spirit of a house cat, nor anger it by withholding it food. I'm going to starve this tiger. That'll tame it. Good job, you Tiger King. But rather feed it bits at a time so that it neither gets overly excited nor neither wrathful. So you don't want to please it too much. You don't want to hurt it, hopefully at all. That's not legal, man. But, owning the thing in the first place in this state. But, yeah, Florida. But you should not overplease the tiger. You should not underplease the tiger. If you neither, the tiger tamer who is tamed himself, if you neither give the tiger all of what they want nor withhold it from them, they will regard you as one of their own, is what it says. Now, this is not only for taming animals. I am thinking David Lynch's Inland Empire, in the middle weird Polish dude is like, I'm good with animals. It's like, all right, creepy dude. Yeah. But whether or not we're good with animals or humans or other beasts, fantastic or not, is that if you tame tigers slowly and carefully, that is taming your own desires, and it is also taming the desires of others all around you, and that would be the same dang things in and outside you all around, which if you settle down more so you can see and are better with. And that is a balancing act, baby bear in the middle as well. So another story from the Liese. The Duke of Qi was looking down from Ox Mountain. It's a nice hamlet on his capital city when he began to weep, wondering why, if his land is so beautiful, he must one day leave it in death. His servants start to cry, realizing they have far less than the Duke, but they also are afraid of death, losing everything they have. Yen Se, Master Yen, who seems to be a Taoist hanging out in the court, how'd he get there, alone was smiling, and the Duke asks him, "Why are you smiling, jerk, while I'm crying?" It's like a Motown hit. Yen Se says, "If we could all hold on to life if we're good, if I'm a great guy," which actually here, there's a couple of stories in the Liese. The Liese is known for riding the wind and having Taoist magical powers. But it also says several times you can't be immortal, even though he's known as an immortal. And it actually says, yeah, like if we could live here by merit and just have more years of life, which the Taoists actually do also believe in, oddly. But he says, if we could live based on how good we are, your great ancestors would still be sitting on the throne. They'd be immortal, and they'd still be here. Notice actually who's going to contradict this dude. That's a very safe bet to make, to say, but your great ancestors were so great and perfect, they'd still be alive, good sir. Who's going to contradict that? The Duke? Any of his servants? I wouldn't, if I were them, you know. That the ancestors, the great ancestors, would still be sitting on the throne. The Duke would be waiting in a rice paddy with a bamboo hat on. The Duke was ashamed of himself. And it's great. And you'd be in the rice paddy with a hat on, buddy. And he gets away with it, probably because he's a court jester of sorts, and because he also seems to have praised the ancestors more than the Duke. And if I'm the Duke, I may want to back off that if I want to maintain my legitimacy. He's also a Duke. He ain't the Emperor. So there's a last story here, which is an excellent one if you're having impatience with society. It says, an old man wished to move a 7,000-foot tall set of mountains, and he begins digging with his sons. It's in his backyard, blocking the view. His wife ridicules him. She says that he will clearly die before he puts a small dent in even one of these stupid mountains. And he says, yes, but my children will have children, and their children will have children, and this mountain isn't getting any bigger. We're going to end off on that. I have a mountain more of videos to do. It's not getting any bigger, though. It'll just keep getting longer, which is convenient, It'll run its course. As long as it does. So, we're going to keep going with the videos. I am going to follow this with acting like a fool and then leading into Taoist anarchism, because while this is not Antifa, this is a bit nor modern forms of anarchism necessarily, and that's for social and political hours, and we don't have those up just yet about anarchism, communism, fascism. This is more how more than one scholar has pointed to the ancient Taoists and said not only do these guys like acting like a fool, as Yen Se just did, screwing with the Duke, but that acting like a fool and having no rank would imply that you want sort of a village mentality without much rank, and that implies radical sort of rural egalitarianism, which would be rather in league with, some would say, anarchism. So we're going to talk about acting like a fool, being a bit crazy, with the Robin Hood-like robbing and tricking Taoist immortals. Multiple godlike beings who like screwing with people and lying to people and all sorts of stuff we've already had in the videos. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the passages that suggest the Taoists think we should live in villages and very, very simply live very, very minimalistically and be as libertarian and or anarchistic as possible, with as little leadership as possible, whether or not that's your political philosophy. And it's good, especially if people identify China today with communism. It's wonderful to say, the range of thought is found in Greece, China, India, everywhere, regardless of what we think about this or that culture. And yeah, you can find the state versus the anarchy being debated in ancient China, much as you find male and female and right and wrong and all of these things, subjectivity, objectivity, debated in India, Greece, and China, and then still in modern times. All right, have a great one, guys. We're going to find time to act the fool a bit later.